boosting competition and breaking the monopoly of big banks and actually really building this new financial services environment in fintechs. It's a very simple idea that the customer owns their data and can share it securely with whoever they like. And no longer will the bank be the monopoly in hiding your data away. You can access it and pass it to a fintech to do loans, etc. Really innovate and boost competition in financial markets. I basically won a piece in North America. We've got a Canadian kind of presence for multiple years, and Canada was going to be the latest market against the open banking regulations, which was actually due in 2023 at the time, is somewhat delayed since. What we basically are finding over there was we engaged one of the big six banks, and what they were looking to do was actually put in place a very quick time to market open banking pilot in 2022. To basically do two things. One of them was to really de-risk their compliance and understand basically their risks and how that was going to be taken forward into a full regulatory program in 2023. But secondly to this, they also wanted to position themselves for market share basically and get strategic advantage. So when I got engaged with this major bank, effectively I had to put in place, at the time there were no regulatory standards. We didn't have a complete picture from the client as exactly what their needs or acceptance criteria is, where they would like to go. They were looking for me to advise them based on my global experience. And effectively, we didn't have an understanding of their internal architecture and design and what was required. So this is where I engaged Headforwards. And the way that I really wanted to do this is, we had a clear understanding from our own global position, within Europe and other places that do open banking, of exactly where we wanted to take the product conceptually. But we needed basically to iterate very, very quickly the FDX standards, they're called. This is the North American standards, which again were fairly embryonic at the time. And we needed to put together a concept really to take the risk out of the program, to really help to start to build also a foundation within the team of understanding IP, and that we can actually produce multiple prototypes in a very quick order for us really then to shape what our plan will be to engage the full pilot with this major bank, okay? And I think I engaged with Andy probably in about summer 2022, if I'm correct. And what we did first is we actually iterated, basically, and the question we're asking ourselves, how do you build a highly complex and data sharing ecosystem in a major foreign bank in 6 months, right? That's the question we're trying to ask ourselves. So what we're trying to do here is basically, put together a diverse team. We were iterating extremely quickly on a prototype, actually originally I think with the team was in C#, really to understand the semantics of what we're looking for, really for the team to understand how that technology would fit together. We wanted to prototype the different kind of technical decisions that we thought were applicable, and then we threw it away. And this is something I've used in my career a number of times. I call it kind of prototype-driven development. And actually, the second time round, we started to understand the risk. We understood the shape of the problem. We understood some of the technical decisions and directions we wanted to go. So we iterated again. We threw it away again. The third attempt, now we've really started to understand where we're moving towards. And it was actually that foundation that then really underpinned our ability to go into, I can't say the name obviously, but one of the major Canadian banks. We actually stood up the software in as close as possible to our infrastructure, which was fully hosted within the Headforwards environment. So we had all the architecture, the infrastructure development ops, we had all the developers and the QA testers supporting this to really iterate over the next 3 to 4 months, basically to stand up a full replica of this entire open banking solution within a Headforwards environment. And we hit that target. And I think probably one of the biggest outcomes from that is the fact that the actual board of the bank, the head of the retail and business banking, is still quite a good client of ours in other places now. That was her aims achieved at the time. She wanted to ensure that she could start to bring in global capability, fintech disruptors into the organization that had a different view around how to iterate pilots, to take the risk, to move them from a waterfall-based approach into a more agile fashions. And this actually demonstrated to them that they could engage new style companies with different agile methodologies and deliver. And that was one of the key outcomes that we saw from that engagement, basically. And so for me, it's really about, how do you understand risk? how do we actually start to iterate and have the capability to understand that, the second time, third time round, you are going to improve it so significantly. It's orders of magnitude better, and your velocity will increase, and you really understand where your technical decisions and your risks and your pros and cons and trade-offs are going to be. And so overall, it was a really hyper successful opportunity for us to really. We actually then delivered, and I think the big statement here is we delivered the first to market in Canada. And subsequently to that, with the support of the bank, and I nearly said that, we actually then went to demonstrate this to the Finance Minister of Canada to help actually demonstrate this as a market-led example of how the open banking regulation and legislation should evolve in Canada. And that was one of the key feedback loops that we then got into the national level based on that pilot. So a hyper successful outcome for us. Okay, I think that's everything I need to waffle on there, Andy, for a moment.
Yeah, so something I always think about, and I just ask you. So you mentioned that we built it in C#, then we built it in Java, and we changed what we use. So we did literally throw away, and I think a lot of people struggle with that throwaway term. Like, oh, I throw something away that we built. I think they really struggle with that. But I think your concept works, and this is where I come back to doing a POC properly. If you build it in something that you can build it quick, and it's not necessarily going to be the tool you're going to use, you've got more chance of sticking to a proof of concept. If you build it in what you're going to build it in, that proof of concept turns into an MVP or turns into something else. So I think there's a lot of value in using something that you can do quick, but isn't going to be the final solution, because it is something you've used to. I'll use the word bond, but you're just pulling something together to prove a point, aren't you? So it doesn't matter what you use. Would you agree with that?
And I think certainly with Agile, what's the principle of Agile? You can't predict the future. You're responding to events. You're trying to basically shorten the iteration cycles down so you're actually delivering in production and testing your assumptions early. And it's those assumptions that you can never clearly define properly up front. Nobody's a genius with a crystal ball. And so therefore, what you're doing here is you're applying sensible principles that you're uncovering those unknowns, right? The old Rumsfeldian kind of statements of unknown unknowns, but it's so true, because this is what kills a project. It's your assumptions and it's your risks and your lack of knowledge of the domain space that you're going to play in. And it's the prototyping with an agile style delivery model that really sets you up for the success. And it is always tempting to try and run at the code to build a system as quickly as possible for the client, and you don't actually understand the problem space fully and the risks and the unknowns. Taking the time at the start to really define that allows you, on your third iteration of the prototype, quite generally for me, to have built a very, very solid foundation. And you have that solid foundation in place, it means that your velocity will change very quickly as you deliver the projects. And I think it's that investment and understanding up front to be very sensible about, we don't know the future. We don't know all the unknowns that are going to happen to us. Technology in this delivery is a highly, highly complicated area where everything wants to go wrong for no reason. That I think this is why, for me, it's really, really, really key to take these kind of pilot POC routes myself.
So some of the points I just said when I was defining that stuff, do you think that, if you hadn't taken that proof of concept approach, do you think it would have been less efficient cost-wise and capacity-wise? What
Absolutely.
Do you think would have happened?
I think at the start, there were certain frameworks we're looking at, across all the microservices and for the front end kind of web services like Spring, Quarkus, and those kind of things. And it really allowed us to come to the frameworks that we're going to, and the terms of our delivery were around a successful pilot implementation for the bank, which they themselves could almost throw away to an extent, but iterate from for the full regulations. So, we actually started to evaluate, and we just didn't know the pros and cons of these tools until you see them fully in action. As a developer, you get real experience with them, and you can actually try and test with them. And it's being able to say, which areas do I want to take risk in? Which frameworks could I use? And I think some of the evaluation by some of the team in there with Greg and John at the time, etc., who delivered really, really well on the development team, it gave us that opportunity to really see it up close and evaluate it, which we just can't do off a piece of paper. Like myself, I put plenty of marketing on my websites, of course, about everything, and then it all sounds superb, but actually you really need to see this up close, touch and feel it, be able to run it and actually see if this is going to be a tool that you can use, that you're going to actually embed into your development SDLC lifecycle. It's going to provide you those efficiencies. How well can you work with it? And actually, how easy is it for the developers to understand and work with? And I think it's only with the real world experience that you can sometimes answer some of those key questions for me.
So I think, it'd be really interesting to, because I can't fully remember, so I'm going to ask you, Lewis. So within those iterations, they were relatively quick, weren't they? Because I'm trying to emphasize that when you do a POC, it's not, it's not like building a whole product takes you years or months. We move pretty quick on these things, don't we?
We do, absolutely. I mean, it is something we learned many years ago in investment banking that we use in a similar way. It's called Boyd principles, and actually, it's the guy who invented the Top Gun, I think, in America, the Colonel Boyd he is, and he said, observe, orient, decide, act. It's called the Boyd loop, and the fighter pilot who wins iterates that loop faster than his opponent. Not a fancy grand macro strategy. It's around being able to make quick decisions, observe, orient, decide, and act very quickly. And we actually brought that into many of the projects because I took over a major one in equity derivatives that stalled. Multi-million pound, 55 million 3-year transformation we had to do. The systems involved were so complex, hundreds of thousands of lines of code everywhere, triggers in databases bidirectionally replicating all around the world and all sorts of stuff that they actually tried to analyze it and they couldn't move anymore because of the paralysis. You're just transferring one level of complexity to another. And actually having that really short iterative cycle, the Boyd loop, if you like, and I frequently call it, allows you to start to move and actually start to solve the problem and not get yourself bogged down in the unnecessary. You can focus on where the important points are. And this is what we did with Headforwards. And, where we really need to focus in is what is that security model? What is the REST API usage? What is the right way that we need to kind of commoditize the security handling around the OIDC, OAuth2 flows? And that was the kind of the key areas that we needed to embed the IP within the teams. We need to really understand where those frameworks worked. And I think we were on a 2-weekly sprint cycle to begin with. I think the initial C# pilot was delivered within, I think, just over 2 weeks into the third week, which was excellent, for the first iteration. And then I think we were heading on a 2-weekly cycle after that with continuous delivery coming out of the team. And that really then enabled us to have the confidence to enter that 4-month period into the big bank, I think, kind of late in the summer. And try and deliver something by the end of the year, which we actually hit the deadline, I think, on around about the 1st of December to actually stand up this example pilot end to end. So it was very, very impressive.
But you think, because of taking that iterative approach, doing a number of POCs, do you believe the outcome was better? So you obviously you did it, you presented it to the bank, and they used it. So do you think the outcome was a good outcome, and do you think what you got from it, the quality of what come from it, you believe it was better? I know you can't. We would have had to do both to assess that. But what do you think?
I think it's, for me, absolutely. One of the things that it did was, it gave us the opportunity to be first to market in North America. So, if you've got first market mover advantage out there, that's significant. The fact is, we had a significant global major bank in Canada where we actually delivered the pilot, ran that in a hyper aggressive kind of timescales, etc., in a very complex area. Open banking is a highly complex area with multiple aspects to it. And, we successfully delivered that and we got it through into that full demonstration stage. And I think the bank took it to, the end of their data sharing and their full test environments between both the digital subsidiary and their main owner. So from that perspective, there was an outcome for the bank. They managed to learn a lot about the risk of open banking, directions, how they wanted to take that forward. So we met the client's needs. And then finally, we demonstrated this to the Canadian government. Now, subsequently to that, we have obviously expanded our reach into now representing and winning RFPs to represent the entire Canadian credit union system. And, this is all the springboards based off of that pilot. And again, people say, it all sounds a bit, it's actually true. That springboard that we needed to do was get brand awareness and credibility and deliver and get first market into that. And from that, we have actually now been able to take all the learnings that we've had from that and continuous feedback into, from all of these pilots and proof of concepts and delivery to really now expand our coverage and range across North America. So, it's a very, very, very good outcome for a good UK fintech now as an export business into the North American market. Really, really positive.
Fantastic. So I'm gonna ask a more general question now to sort of bring Raph into a bit, and you can both answer this. But there could be obvious reasons like capacity, but I wanted to ask why did you use partners rather than alternatives such as internal resource, whatever? You answer truthfully, of course.
Raph, please, you want to go first?
Yeah, cool. So for us, it was speed and synergy. So obviously we've been working with Headforwards for our wellbeing website that we have internally within John Lewis Partnership. We've been running that with Headforwards for around about 10 years. So what we were very keen on doing is we've been looking at developing an app for about 10 years, and constantly in discussion with Headforwards about when probably was the right time to do it. But what we didn't want was to sort of run two separate systems, and that, you know, so very different to Lewis. I don't operate in that sort of an IT world at all. I sit under HR and well-being, and so I'm the least techie here. But I know what mine's all about, user experience, and I know what people want, and I want them to sort of enjoy what we give them. So our team is myself and a few others, so you can't possibly run multiple systems when there's only us. So the whole point of continuing, you know, using Headforwards for the app was making sure they were all linked and synced to the one platform, you know, so everything we do in the website is connected to the app by sort of turning things on and off. You know, we don't have to duplicate content, we don't have to duplicate work, and by doing that, the time we spent, I mean, from our initial thinking like we want to do an app to delivering an app was 3 months, and I don't think that would be possible if you were starting, you know, afresh with someone else. And also the 10-year sort of relationship we'd built with Headforwards, they almost are part of our team. So when I talk to the gang at Headforwards, they know our product so well. So when we're discussing ideas, they're doing a lot of that for us in terms of thinking as I think, because they know our product so well. So delivering the app within 3 months was doable because of what we did. I think if we'd gone to sort of another provider or external, you know, you're having to tell the whole story and get them on board with the ethos and everything, because John Lewis Partnership is a bit of an odd one, being co-owned business, and we are all very much in belief of making profit, but in a nice way. We want people to be happy and be profitable. It's not about everything we do isn't about trying to make money. It's just trying to make our partners enjoy the services that are available to them in a way that they can access. So yeah, that's how I think for us it was all about, yeah, the synergy and the speed of delivering a project that quickly.
What I should have mentioned really is it's good that we've got diversity in this call. You know, you've got like more of a business side person who's more of a product owner. I know you're a product owner as well, Lewis, but then Lewis is an ultimate techie as well as a product owner. So it's good to have that diversity. Thanks for that, Raph. Lewis, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, obviously the future kind of working models now, as I say, is network organizations. You know, gone are the days really where I think you're operating vertically across the entire value chain. And, you know, when I worked with Headforwards, what I was looking for was, it was that specialisms. You know, they have multi-language support, somebody who's very clear in the agile principles, who can actually start to mobilize teams on a commercial basis for me, kind of within decent notice. And also, you know, obviously we've got different timescales that we're kind of working towards with these clients. You know, there's some volatility in that kind of requirements, and therefore, you know, what I'm doing here is being able to partner up to bring in that specialization when I needed to really hit these kind of pilot programs into the Canadian market, to be able to help advise me on certain technology choices, also from their feedback and experience within the markets. And so basically it provides me multiple views into technology capabilities, provides that specialization, and, you know, and under the commercial model, you know, we can actually get very clear outcomes in delivery. You know, I don't want to be continuously scaling up and down my own organizations, and therefore partnerships work very, very well to manage this. And also from a cash flow risk profile as well, you know, basically I've, you know, potential volatilities and what happen in those markets, and I can work, you know, really well. And the Headforwards have been very good about helping to manage, you know, and being flexible around how we're going to structure the teams, what timelines, and how we resource these things, you know, in an agile fashion where, you know, again, I'm not coming to them with a hard and fast set of requirements, exactly what's going to happen for the next 12 months. You know, there's Andy here and the team and everybody else were able to help me kind of really sit down and refine what that is going to look like. Knew that they could help me manage that risk profile over the time that we're doing this, and being able to kind of mobilize the structure of specialisms to fit in with those kind of requirements. And obviously we then got a kind of a really good shared risk model and opportunity into the market as we went forward. So for me, there is great benefit to partnering in these ways with organizations such as Headforwards, because, you know, that it does bring a lot of specialization with a lot of commercial upside potentially as well.
Cool. Thanks, Lewis. So I've got a question. I just want to pose it. I want to have an opinion on it. That's okay. I put an article out on LinkedIn actually, and it's from my experience, and it'd just be good to get both of your views on this. So what I'm talking about here is I think it's difficult to perform these sort of things internally. And one of my takes from when I used to do this is that, and this is a good thing, by the way, so all the devs out there, don't beat me up. I find the devs I've worked with are what I call platinum, and they want to do everything well, which is what you want a dev to do. You want quality, you want it done well, that's what you want to go out the door. But POCs and MVPs are, especially POCs, a little different because you're not going to do everything properly. So when you try and get your dev people to do this, it's quite challenging because they can take much longer than they should or whatever because they want to do it properly. Do you think, do you think that that's true? And do you think there's other reasons that make it challenging to do internally? Do you want to start that, Raph, or what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm blessed because we don't have some of those issues because we believe it or not, I'm sort of the expert in our area to do with tech. But I think what's key was keeping it really, for us, it was keeping it really close to the sort of the objective, and we didn't involve many people, so we were sort of given the go ahead and the budget to do it, and then we sort of didn't involve anyone else outside of our area because that would have, then you got the creep and you got from our perspective, you've got then more people interested and wanting more from what you're doing. So we were very clear on what we want to do, and it was like a singular thing. The app, we wanted the app to do one thing that the website doesn't do, and by doing that, we delivered it really quickly, and then we start doing the iterations and the improvements and the sort of scaling it up. So I think we were I think from our perspective, we could have only have done that by keeping it within our sort of small group, because if other areas of the business sort of knew what we were doing, they knew what we were doing, but if we'd involve them, then you get that creep, and then that whole minimum viable product doesn't then exist, because what we learned, and sort of a pro and a plus, I guess, when we went out with the MVP product, because the website was so established and it's been there for sort of 10 years, so we've had all that time to really develop it and improve it over time. Putting out something that was sort of like not finished but pretty much there, but we knew there was more to do, the expectations were quite high, so trying to sort of meet those expectations, that was the difficult thing, because you've already got something that exists and you're delivering a new sort of tool. Their expectations are up there, thinking it's going to be sort of a full scale blown app like you get on your phone. So that was the challenging thing. Not so from our perspective, it was the user expectation, the user expecting platinum, service, platinum app, when our budget, they don't know what our budget was, but the budget is so small, and time constraints, and developing an app within 3 months and putting it out is not going to be like an app that's been established for 10 years and has had all that money spent and developed. So our issue was user expectations and meeting those, I would say.
So in summary, I think you're talking about trying to do that internally, and put me right if I've misunderstood, takes away from focus and may derail what you were trying to do to some extent. Not that anybody's trying to do that. That's what may happen from taking it down that road.
Yes, yeah, and the even more challenging thing with us, because we're a co-owned business, everyone does have an equal voice. So we do a lot of discussion and community sort of based sort of what should we do and things. So we were very deliberate to try and not include as many people as we could, because everyone has a different opinion on what you would do, and that'd be nice if you chuck that in, let's do that. But we always knew there was one thing we wanted the app to do, so we just focused on that one thing, and then over time we can develop it. But I think in the past we've done some stuff where we've tried to do something on the website, and it's taken so long, because if you involve everyone, it really causes a real burden because you've got, for us, the business entrusted us to do what we were doing, and they sort of knew what we were doing, so we were lucky to just get on with it. I think obviously, and also because we're outside of the old IT technology function, we sit separate again. You know, we are the experts, so we were sort of entrusted just to get on with it. I think if we were sat with another top team, it would be much trickier.
It was sort of it's almost the approach of build something for them to see rather than talk about it and never build anything, wasn't it? So let's start something, and then the users can take a look, and then you've gone from there, I guess, have you?
Yeah, the discussion can then start, can't it? Because
that's fine then, isn't it?
Yeah, and especially when it's a small budget in a quick time, if it fails, it's not like a big deal, is it? Because you've only wasted a few months and a bit of budget, you know. Yeah, if exactly. and actually what we've noticed with the app, it's, you know, it's now about 10 months old. We've got about 50% of so our website users, about 50% have downloaded the app and are using it. So around about 30,000 of our partners are using the app now, and it's we keep iterating sort of every month, you know, slowly, and it's building up, you know, and it might not ever finish, you know, we might not actually ever have a complete finished app, but we keep changing. And as like you were saying earlier, Lewis, with things developing all the time and new technology and new wants and people that want different things, there's no point, you can't predict that. So you just keep going along and doing, you know, we've got stuff on our back burner that's 10 years old because it's sat there, and actually over time it becomes irrelevant because things have changed. So I think the advantage of thinking, like you're saying, the agile and POC and MVP is actually it will adapt over time to what it should do, rather than go, no, we want this. You spend years doing it, you develop it, launch it, and everyone's like, well, we don't want that anymore.
Cool. Guys, before we continue, I've just realized that I think the audio wasn't working at the start of this session, so I just wanted to apologize for that. Obviously this can be watched back, but yeah, sorry that happened at the start of this show. Yeah, apologies. Okay, thanks, Raph. So have you got anything to add to that, Lewis?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, a couple of things from my perspective on these things. Number one, when I was in the banks, you know, quite often a proof of concept was a difficult thing to sell for the tech departments to the business, because it would be quite often, you know, where's my return, right, on every spend, right? The bankers always looking, well, what's my bottom line? And one of the challenges really there was, you know, it would, you know, as a technology organization, you've got to research and development. You've got to try these concepts, and you need to invest to understand the way forward. And as we're saying, you know, we can't predict everything. One of the key things that worked for us was when we said to the business at the end of the day, look, with these proof of concepts and an MVP, you know, we can get you a minimum viable product a lot quicker than your standard IT projects that you've been running, you know, that always moaning they're taking too long, costing too much, and not returning enough, etc. With the MVP, one of the key things is you get a return on investment as soon as it's live. So your capital is not tied up for 2 to 3 years in a major project, you know, going left, right, and centre. You're actually getting a return on investment on the delivery, and those POCs can really support your, you know, agility to get an MVP to market a lot quicker. And therefore, you know, because you can actually then start to really write the business case around the real risk areas. And people that are senior enough in the business do understand every project is a risk. You know, why undertake it otherwise, really? If it's a surefire banker, you should have already done it. And so therefore, you know, being able to articulate where your risk areas and how you're mitigating those risks really builds the business confidence. And I think then being able to deliver that MVP and actually start putting in place client success programs, and being able to then do your benefits tracking as we do. You know, with any big client, we understand their business outcomes. We have customer success managers who go into that to make sure that they're actually realizing the changes in the benefits. And then they start to actually understand they're getting that return on investment immediately in short scale iteration. Now, and that's a very powerful tool financially to really back you up to deliver these pieces. You know, and certainly from me, my own perspective, you know, bringing products to market in Canada at the moment, sitting behind, you know, my ivory tower, thinking that I know everything that's right for that market, and delivering it in 3 years from now, and then suddenly, as Raph was also saying, suddenly everyone goes, "Oh, Lewis, no, didn't really want that, mate." You know, it's death to you. What I need to be able to do is I need to get my product to market to an MVP status, as people say, if your MVP doesn't make you wince, you're too long to market, right? So you need to get things out, and you need to get them on the customer's platform, and you need to monetize, right, both ways. From our perspective, me as a product delivery company, but also from the point of view of when you're doing this internally, I think it's that understanding of risk, having that senior level conversation. You are, if you think about it, well-respected people for your technical abilities normally within the organization, and being able to stand down with the business to say, these are the risks that I need to manage, I need to mitigate, and being realistic that not everybody is some psychic that can see the entire future, and then actually articulate what that financial benefit is from a return on investment profile and risk reduction. I think if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I think it's some real, people listening, there's some really good stuff in what you've just said there. So I think we're about halfway through. So Raph, I know you said some parts of what you've done, so maybe we switch over to you and you take us through your journey of working with Headforwards and your experience of what you built. That's okay?
Yeah. So the area I fall under, we we do all our well-being and our rewards in-house. So everything within the John Lewis partnership in terms of employee rewards and benefits sits in-house. So we manage that. So when I talk about a website, we have our own in-house website called Partner Choice, and basically that is an external website which we manage with Headforwards. Partners register to access it, and that encompasses all their stuff, all their partner benefits they can access, and that's from discounts to sort of things we fund. We also have this is a bit of a sales pitch. We also have hotels partners can stay at. We have boats they can learn to sail on. So we are all about making everyone's life who works with us enjoyable. So the website sort of has to reflect that. So it is the least corporate website you could get. So the whole point of our website is to make it enjoyable to access and view these things in your home, because that's where most people are accessing it. And like we know now, about 70% of all of our users are on their phone looking at the website. So it's all about sort of, it's colorful, it's vibrant, and it's just engaging. So that's been going on for about 10 to 12 years. But everyone wants an app, and we've really been fighting not to do an app, because we didn't just want to do an app that wraps the website into it, because it just feels, well, what's the point? Because especially now with mobile optimized websites, when you look at our website on your phone, it looks like an app anyway when you're on the browser. So we've spent a long time really deciding what we want to do, and the app, literally we were given a small amount of money early on in last January, and like I said, we got the green lights to create an app. We had a quick one-day workshop with Headforwards to run through what we think we needed, and within sort of from that point to then launching it 3 months later, we got a minimum viable product out there, which was very specific and unique to why would you want to download the app if you've got a fully functional website and everyone's used to the website. So the app had to be clear, and it might not sound very sexy, but essentially with the app you can log in and it shows you a map, and it shows you all the benefits in your area. So like other things out there, so you can just browse if you're at home, or if you go somewhere visiting, you can see what's available. And we're slowly sort of building it out for the app to offer other unique things. But like I said, it's great because we treat our partners like customers. So everything we do, we run it as though we're an external organization almost. And that's been the challenging thing is customers' experience and customers' sort of expectations, because I think because it looks decent and it runs well, I think a lot of our partners forget it's an internal function. I think they think we pay for this externally and it's all run like by multi-million-pound business, and we've got hundreds of developers working on this thing. Like, well, that doesn't exist. So meeting those expectations, and also we John Lewis and Waitrose so our main thing is customer service. You know, that you shop with us because of the customer journey. So we try and replicate that in our website and app, and that's quite hard to do, to keep customer service high in terms of what you're doing in a quick turnaround. You know, a 3-month from we've got some money, can we do an app, to launching it 3 months later is hard to do it and to not annoy your existing customers, if that makes sense. Because the app, although it's new, all of the users were existing customers to the website, so they're expecting something, you know, that we weren't probably giving them initially. So it got there, but like I said, now we've got, you know, nearly 30,000 of our partners using it actively. So they've downloaded and they're actively using it, and that's half of everyone who's registered on the website. So that in 10 months, I think, you know, success story.
Okay. So in your case, it didn't increase usage because you've got a website, but there's been a large uptake on the actual app itself.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I think the thing is, we forget, you know, I'm a certain demographic and age, so I think, you know, that younger people sort of want things differently, and I think it just, what we're trying to offer is a bit like social media. You know, I use certain social media that probably, you know, the young people don't use now, you know, and I think you forget that. And I think as much as it's great to have a website, the app offers a different thing for different people, you know, you know, and that's what we were trying to do. The website's great because it's got everything, you know, it's got everything possibly, but actually, you know what, you just want to go, oh, I want to like go out for dinner, I want something like cheap, go to the app, shows you, you know, you don't have to wade through all your benefits to find that. So I think it's, yes, in terms of encourage it, to be quite honest, it might, I mean, something we can check, it probably has encouraged new partners to join up to the website to access the app, you know, because it is different, and it is being used by quite a high proportion of partners, and I don't think it's the same people using the app and the website, because they are so different in the purpose. You do use them very differently for different things, but you know, it's great to be able to do all this in-house, you know, for a business like us to be able to go, you know, you've got your own website, your own app, and it's all about stuff to make your life more enjoyable, more fun, and more rewarding, is brilliant. And but the key was to do that quickly. So like Lewis was saying, so our stakeholders, obviously we're not, you know, big like the banks, you know, expecting too much. But our stakeholders, you know, directors and senior management, they do expect a return on their investment in terms of, you know, we've given you some money, show us what you've done. And doing it in this way we did really hooked them in, and actually it's meant we've been able to get more budget to keep developing because they've seen something really quick and it's worked. Whereas in the past, you know, historically in big organizations, you have that waterfall effect, don't you, of you spend years developing something, you launch it, and then some people are like, oh, that's not what I expected, and they get a bit disheartened. We've managed to keep their interest at a high level, and that's how we've continued to keep the funding going.
I find that quite sorry, Andy, it's just quite a fascinating point, because as you're saying, Raph, it really, the customer, then the perception changes and the trust changes, doesn't it? And that's the key thing, is once you've got that delivery there, it may be limited in scope, but actually it's solid, it's working, right? And all of a sudden then they trust you, and that's where you can really start to build a momentum with the customer, I think, personally, as well. Yeah, sorry, Andy.
No, it's fine. You can talk, Lewis. You can keep talking. I was thinking about the other side of this, because I wanted to be quite a balanced sort of discussion. So about all the great things, and that's great, and I just wonder if there's any downsides to some of these things. So I was just going to try and get your brains thinking around that. So the question I had, Raph, was, so you brought on these 30,000 people. Do you think when you released the first MVP, right, so there you got your first usable minimal features, did that hit the ground running, or do you think it was slow, and then as you built that, do you get what I'm trying to say? Was it the MVP that had the massive impact? Because I don't know, I'm just curious. Or was it the further build that started to grow that?
I think it's funny actually, because we got some sort of reviews, you know, feedback, and they're quite amusing, because I think the thing with it was we did get a massive intake initially, and obviously this was a bit of
brilliant.
It was a bit of a test and learn anyway, so we knew it was never going to be finished when we launched it. It was a sort of, you know, so I think the hard thing was like I said, is because they're existing customers and their expectations were so high, it was very hard to sort of inform them that, you know, it's a new app, you know, it's got a new function, but it's like, it's new and it's not finished, you know, it's not finished. It's pretty much there, but we're going to keep building. And so I think it was managing those expectations, because I think that's the downside. If we didn't have the website and we'd gone live with an app and that, then there's less to sort of go, oh, well, yeah, well, this is new, we've, you know, not seen this before, and that's fine. But because their expectations from the website was there, that was the challenging thing. And then what we've noticed, though, and I think this is what Headforwards anyway, the team sort of made us aware, was just keep getting those developments going out, so there's always something to hook them back in with, you know. So we have developed new features, so it's not like if they were like, oh, I don't need a map to see my local offers and things, we've added additional things, so there's another drawer, and they were very much like, actually, you know what, if we'd launched it now with everything, that would have what 10 months ago, you know, so over a year ago. If we'd waited a year to launch with everything, I think everyone, you know, they'd still want more, wouldn't they? And everyone wants more. So it was the hardest was meeting expectations of because they're existing customers. So that's what the learn would be. The learn would be probably be more informative of what we were delivering, you know, sort of being a bit more, because obviously, to be quite honest, you know, MVP, minimum viable product, and POC, all these things, quite techie, you know, like most people don't know what that means if you just speak to sort of your friends or anyone. So I think if we were more clearer as to what we would develop, what we're going to land, but we're going to have more, you know, iterations and more development. So don't expect the final sort of shiny product. That would have probably helped. But luckily, you know, because our customers are internal, they're more forgiving because they're, you know, they're in-house, aren't they? You know, if you're going, you know, as an external product, you know, I guess you'd go about a slightly different way in terms of probably launch into maybe smaller segments of groups, or you know, you might not just go full scale on the Play Store and the Apple Store. Just get at, you know, you'd probably like start doing this sort of A/B testing, and there'd be a bit more like segmented groups to just build it up slowly. But you know, we've had, you know, we've got 30,000, you know, people using it. So it's great, you know, and that's, you know, it's a steady, you know, we get about 200 new downloads a day. So it's, you know, it's growing, you know, it's nice and steady. And now we've got it established. The basics was the hardest thing, sorry. The login, you know, logging into the app. You know, I know it's boring, but just getting that right was hard. You know, making sure that it's synced up, and we've done biometrics now because it makes sense. Those things, it's not sexy, is it? It's not great, but that was key. We established that really quickly. Sorry, Lewis.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we see in the banking it's critical for competitive advantage, because if it's really seamless and the customer feels it's very secure, they have a much more positive experience normally. So no, I actually personally think it's great. I'm loving what you've done there, actually. Sorry. I think
that's the thing. It's not fun stuff, is it? All the time you spend sort of just improving that one element, logging in, which is like, the user doesn't need to think about it and doesn't need to worry about like how hard that is, but adding the biometrics and those things, once we got that in place, that was sort of second iteration, because we knew that was key. You know, if people are having problems just getting into the app, they're just going to go, oh, I'm just going to delete it and do something else.
Rates. Yeah, huge. Yeah. No,
so
I think that's very good. Yeah.
So it's from my perspective, you know, I wanted to create lovely, beautiful things, but having to do those sort of dull things, but actually makes a difference, because you're right, if you can't even get in, or you find the experience accessing it a problem, you go somewhere else. And I guess, like we say with banking, I stick with a particular bank because of the ease of accessing the app. That is the only reason I'm with them, not because anything else. It's the app's great and it's easy to use, and I don't want to move to anyone else because it works.
Thanks, Rob. So keeping with that balance, I mean, you obviously talked about maybe it's a little easier because you've got internal. So let's bounce the other world of external banking people that you're trying to please when you deliver them some level of MVP or product. How did it land for your client first time around?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we talk about the Headforwards one, actually, again with the bank, it was I think it was a significant piece for them. Now, the Canadian market and this bank in particular, it was a little bit more kind of a antiquated development environment and processes there, which were actually more centered around waterfall, which I personally haven't done since the late 90s. And so it's so actually, I think what the actual outcomes that they were looking for was, can we start to actually engage different profiles of organization to help support us with delivery in the future? As we mentioned earlier about partnerships, for the banks themselves, it's around them changing their role in the value chain. They don't, in the future, deliver all services. They're not going to be every front end anymore. They're not going to be delivering all of the different aspects of the digital journey anymore. It's starting to become, you have to partner with different organizations to be able to deliver those things. And for the outcomes that they're looking for is, can we start to take advantage of these digital offerings we see in the global markets? Are we actually able to partner with a fintech type agile delivery model? And does that actually start to help us and can we start to work with that in our organization, start to transition our internal models? And so, that was, I think, a substantive part of the engagement, and certainly for the board level at this bank. Now, it so happens that the certain person at the board level at a bank is now CEO of a very major car leasing world at the moment, and has actually now re-engaged us in that space as well. And I think that is demonstration of the outcomes that we actually took from that learning, demonstrated, and this was the senior person on the board's driver to try and actually demonstrate that growth in the strategy and capability that really did make a significant impact, I think, internally, positive and negative at times. I think there were, we can't say this is always, there were aspects of that which I think the existing organizational structure butted up against, and we had a lot of problems, in certain areas. But again, that isn't, I don't think, a negative necessarily, because it just means you're actually continuously learning and you're feeding back those learnings from a more agile delivery, and it will stress an organization of that magnitude and those kind of embedded processes for the last 50 years, and therefore you are going to expect some friction. And I think that in itself is a positive learning point that you can take out. So overall, I think that for the impact to our client, I think it was certainly I think it was overall a positive. I think it demonstrated many ways that you can actually partner with the new types of organizations, and I think they learned a lot from it. And I think we did as well. And I think, and there are always positives and negatives in the approaches. And I think for ourselves, we saw our quite agile and probably maybe quite strong in the way that we would approach those kind of iterations and frustrations, etc. That, we didn't have the empathy for an organization that maybe doesn't move in that way historically and hasn't yet embedded toward it. And therefore, I think it's really being able to also then, how do we engage with that client to understand their needs properly, and what's their transformation, what's their own journey, what's your journey, and how can you support each other, and also have, I think, a positive friction. I think, I can see the 5 dysfunctions of a team behind you, which I think is a very good lesson from on the bookshelf there. And I think one of them is about having healthy conflict, actually supporting and trusting each other and being able to openly discuss these pieces. And I think, being able to do these kind of MVPs and pilots and get quick delivery into clients is brilliant. But again, it can lead to difficulties actually, as well as with positive outcomes, I think. Enough waffle.
Okay. No, it's good. It's good. So I feel like in summary, you guys have got both had positive outcomes of taking the approach. So it's so that's what I'm trying to get a balance there, because so I think you've actually obviously done them correctly, because you haven't spent years at them, you've spent weeks and months at them, so that's a good sign. and it sounds like you both had positive outcomes. And I think that what I'm hearing from you both in different words is that it's really important to know what you're trying to achieve. And I think that is, it's all right knowing how to run a POC or an MVP, but part of that is what are you, because you could pick the wrong approach if you haven't got that tied down, and then that leads to all sorts of problems, I guess. Would you agree with that, guys?
I think so. I mean, I think I've got one personal experience from this that is very relevant, which was I was in a big investment bank back in the early 2000s, Dresdner, that unfortunately blew up in the credit crunch. And and one of the things that was it was a very good organization to trust and do pilots, proof of concepts, take risk. It was very forward on R&D. Many technology, and some of those decisions worked out brilliantly. We're a smaller bank, punched above our weight because we're at the forefront of certain technology like grid computing that came out at the time, stuff like that. We were then able to use that to manage the risk on the books really well. However, it became its own over a cottage industry, really, internally. And before we know it, we were ending up having POCs about everything, and it became to the point where people were just, I think to a degree, if I'm not being too unkind, but some people were just playing with toys. And and what we then were starting to see was this kind of culture and ethos was good in one way, but it became unmanaged. And I think this is where the relationship between the IT and the business fell apart for a bit, because all of a sudden you've got the IT chaps and the businesses I sat there just playing with toys and not actually delivering. We didn't have outcomes. If you're doing POCs and MVPs and pilots, you need governance over them that really directs it back to what those outcomes are and delivery. Because as technicians, and myself included in this category, we love going and playing with the new thing, right? And what's going on here, how's it going to work, etc. And sometimes perhaps you have cognitive dissonance that actually there's going to be a positive outcome, and there not always is. And so therefore, I think you need to really be careful around the fact that you are really doing this pilot and MVP in a way that's going to then start to reduce risk, improve the quality, learn something. And it's not just a punt in the wild of something that you fancy to do. And I think that was my own kind of negative in the banks back in the day, personally. That's where it grew legs and got carried away, basically.
Yeah, and I think, Andy, as well, we were lucky to, because we've been working on this website, I've been doing it from it started, so I initiated the website. So we've had 10, 12 years of thinking about, if we did an app, what would we do? And obviously that changes every year, what we would do. So when we got to the point of, let's do it, we were very clear on what we wanted to do without having to start thinking about that. So it was really key to have the experience to know what you want. I think if we had got someone in, say, can you do us an app, the vision and ideas were completely different, because they've not had that experience of what we've learned over 10 years of time of the customer experience and the stuff we put on the website. So that sounds, so although it only took 3 months, it's sort of, there's been many years of time that's gone into it, if that makes sense, then spent actually developing the products.
Cool. Thanks, Rob. I think the other observation I make is these two things are obviously part of that whole journey of getting to a finished brilliant product that everybody wants to use, aren't they? And they do, you could argue they come in some order. You do a POC which drives to an MVP, which and there's really good reasons why we do those things. So a sort of question I've got, I'm struggling with the answer, so you may struggle with the answer, but it'd be good to hear, is where wouldn't you use these? Are there any scenarios where you wouldn't start with some sort of tool that helps you de-risk, like a POC or an MVP?
Yeah, well, so I mean, to be honest, we've started taking the approach of MVP on most things we do now. So we're working on some work development on the website, and we are, I suppose, it's all agile approach, but we are basically doing what we did with the app in terms of small sort of chunks of work, releasing and then developing and releasing, and I suppose it's a bit like a minimum viable product, because we're transforming the website in terms of its design and function. So it's quite a big thing, but the way a customer will see it, they won't notice. It's not. It's big pieces of sort of things in the background and additional features. So we've sort of taken on that whole approach of rather than sort of just sort of, you know, we've got a list of 100 things we're sort of trying to work through. We're trying to really like group pieces of work together, sort of make them work, get them out, next group of piece of work. But you know, you might go back to the other bit because you still got to refine it. So it's really sped up what we're doing. So I think back 10 years ago, you know, we to do some of the stuff we're doing now we spent years doing it, because we, you know, the way we approached it was very different. Now we're very much like, let's get these things done, get them out, and then test and learn continuously. You know, the website will always continuously be changing without it being like radically, you know, a complete refresh and everyone's like, oh, a new website launch. It's just going to constantly evolve, and so will the app in sort of togetherness, you know, which is the beauty of housing it in from one partner.
Yeah, I think from my perspective as well, like sometimes it's worth having a look at the function of what you're trying to do. So, you know, quite often things like let's say we have some regulatory reporting to do, and it's about how you've made loan decisions, and you need to explain the credit risk factors that you've looked at for the customer and report them to regulator. So, you know, you're going to build a system that is about, let's just put an arbitrary number, it's £1.5 million budget or something like that, whatever. You might, you know, that's where the requirements and the acceptance are reasonably key. You might well be looking at a lot of vendor products coming in to support you in those, and you know, where you're POCing, I think, should therefore be is really, it's where's going to be both risk, but maybe where can I get competitive advantage? And sometimes some of these kind of requirements around things like regulatory, etc., are not competitive advantage questions, and therefore actually going through more of a by the numbers, you know, buy, not build where possible, you know, de-risking those strategies. And I think actually more often that, you know, if there is a more of a competitive advantage revenue generation plays, then I suggest maybe that's where, you know, because there isn't an unlimited bucket of money for POCs at the end of the day. And so therefore, I think it is key that where you're going to make either a revenue protection play to retain, you know, protect your customers using you. So you need a great new website or something, otherwise they're all going to go, or an app, or you want to basically build a new product like I am and get it into market and do things like that. I think that's where there's a lot more unknown and risk. And I think that's where if you've got the amount of money available, probably invest it more into competitive advantage plays to de-risk those aspects versus some of the projects where it's more of a clear buy strategy with a lower risk profile, right? So I think, you know, use the money wisely on a POC to focus in on those kind of strategies would be kind of my thinking anyway, high level.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So we're hitting an hour here, guys. Well, I think we can talk forever. So I thought we'd just start to close. And I was just going to ask you if you've got any golden nuggets of, you know, is there anything else you'd like to, you know, say, well, you know, I don't know, that will help the audience? Anything you'd like to add? Fine, if not.
No, I was just going to say, I think from my perspective, it's the collaboration with the team. So, you know, I come up with the ideas and the vision, and then obviously Headforwards will make it happen. But it's the collaboration that, you know, and we treat well, I think we treat Headforwards and sort of vice versa, sort of as like I said earlier, as part of our team. So we don't see them as, you know, a third party provider or an external. You know, so the collaboration and getting everyone really involved in what we're doing really speeds and helps to deliver the outcome, because I think, you know, like, you know, the Emmas and the Rubies and the team, who they sort of can see the vision that I've got. So when it comes to them doing the coding, which, you know, I, you know, which when I see it makes no sense, but they can see my vision and they can adapt it and then get it out there. So the collaboration is huge and really working together well. And the other thing, I from my perspective, and this is just from like a product owner point of view, I found it very good to sort of conceptualize what we want visually for the team, so for Headforwards. So being able to create sort of diagrams and sort of mock-ups of the ideas and sort of storyboard the process, you know, that we want to happen, that I think really helps them to sort of build that, because it's not just words, it's not just, you know, like translating sort of what I you know, verbally say or write, to be able to visualize it definitely speeds up the process of getting it to sort of to launch, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
I think I'll just echo Ralph's sentiments there. That I think it's probably a good way to end. Actually, I think that was a nice description of the engagement and, you know, actually positive engagement with Headforwards. Actually, I think it was very well put. So I think I'm not going to add anything to that. I thought it was very well said.
Great stuff. So, Ralph Lewis, really appreciate your time, more than you know. Thank you for your insights. I think some really interesting things for people to hear there. Hope it gets people thinking and you know, stirs their interest. And I also want to thank everybody who's turned up to come and see us. And so thanks, and see you all soon. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.